Hi, I'm Susan. Welcome back to my studio. I would like to take you on a very brief tour of a painting that I just finished in about 15 real-time minutes, and I'm going to give you this 15 minutes just as they are. I'm not speeding them up, but I just wanted to get some paint on some paper. I'll talk you through my experience here, and I hope you'll join me and enjoy a few minutes of Floral Whimsy. So I'm showing you here that I am propping my paper up on a roll of paper towels so that there is a bit of a decline from back to front. And I'm using this wonderful spritzer bottle that gives a very even spray to wet my palette. I always like to wet my palette before I paint. And I'm just going to draw some posies, basically. I'm just going to draw some center areas of some flowers with a Sharpie S gel 1.0 pen. It's a permanent pen, but I was in such a rush today that I didn't allow it to dry. So it gave kind of an interesting bleed, which you may be able to see as I paint or at the end result. What I'm doing today is one of my favorite things, which is to experiment and not really know ahead of time how things are going to turn out. I love the idea of the unpredictable, to just try new ways of doing things. In fact, I guess I'm easily bored because I don't like to go back and do things that I've already done before. I apologize, for some reason the autofocus is drifting in and out. So please bear with me with that weird autofocus. Hopefully that will settle down here. So I'm drawing some petals, and I'm drawing some of them behind others, kind of like the idea of looking into a flower garden. So that gives a little bit of dimensionality. I do not like to draw things and then color in the lines. So when I get my paintbrush going here, I'm not going to worry about the lines. They just give me sort of a direction of where these flowers will be placed on the picture plane. This paper, as I mentioned earlier, is student grade paper. I didn't even really pay attention to the paper. I just grabbed a sheet of, I think this is Richardson 135-pound student grade paper. It's cellulose paper. It's not cotton rag, but that's okay. This is just to get some paint on the paper. I am not doing a masterpiece. This piece will never go in a show. I'm just having some fun, and I feel like if I continue to practice, I'm much more confident when I'm traveling and grab my paints and have 15 or 20 minutes to sit down and quickly put something down on paper. If I continue to practice doing that, my brush has more confidence. I'm not worried about, oh my goodness, how do I do this? My tools are more familiar to me, and the paint to water ratio is something that I'm more familiar with. It's just good practice. So I'm using Daniel Smith paints. I really love their paints, and I do have some other brands of paints in this little palette that I've made for myself, but mostly these reds and magentas are quinacridone colors. I've been painting with those for many years. And I'm using a brush that's a quill brush. It's a very old brush. I have several of these made by different companies, but today I grabbed my Isabey number 2 quill. It serves me well when I'm traveling, and I'm kind of trying to limit myself today two materials that I would use when I'm on the road. I wouldn't take this many Inktense pencils with me. I might take a little package of them, but these are Inktense pencils, and I'm sanding some of the Inktense lead onto some of the wet paper. I think at the end of this video, when I do a close-up, you'll see that this adds a little bit interesting texture. I don't do this all the time. I just thought it would be kind of fun to do. So I wanted to stop in the middle of painting this painting and grab the opportunity to use this texture, this effect, while I still had some wet of the paper. This paper is smooth. I wouldn't call it hot press, but it's quite near hot press. And it has dried very quickly today for some reason. So I wanted to get in there with that sandpaper technique while a few of the petals were still wet. I was in such a hurry I didn't even bother taping this paper down. I just wanted to throw some paint today. I hope you will notice that if you want to be very free with your painting, if you want to step away and see that it's gestural and has some very free, sort of liberated brush marks, you might want to do as I'm doing here, which is hold the brush out at the end of the handle. I never put my fingers down around the ferrule of the brush, down around the bristles, because when I do, it sort of chokes me up to make some very tight marks, and I don't like that look. So I'm drawing into this with my Inktense pencil. Inktense, when it's reconstituted, when you wet the pencil, it really shows up beautifully. And so I'm giving some direction to these petals, and I'm going back into where the paper is still somewhat wet, but every once in a while you'll see me reach over and re-wet this pencil into my water so that it gives a more saturated line. If I didn't do that, it would be a very pale line, and I'm looking for saturation here. I'm always looking for saturation. I love bright colors. Moving around the flower petals with magenta. I'm primarily using magenta and quinacridone red in these flowers. I went back in with the Inktense pencil because those petals are wet. These are fantasy flowers, obviously. I'm not using any photo reference. I just wanted to paint. So this is a favorite color of mine, green gold. And I think it really goes well with these magentas. I'll be using 3 colors of green. Green gold, Daniel Smith green gold, sap green, and deep sap green. They're kind of my go-to greens. Moving the greens around the picture plane, if you will. Sort of sets off the flowers. Take notice of how I'm holding my brush all the way out at the end, dancing it around. So I don't worry. I don't worry my brush. And that's how my marks stay pretty loose and gestural. I'm not terribly thrilled with this painting at this point. You'll be seeing here toward the end that I'll be grabbing the pen to finish the painting out. But I'm putting some greens in. Some ideas of stems, maybe. I didn't leave much white of the paper. I probably should have, but there's no should. I had to fill that white in because there wasn't much other white on the paper, so it would have stuck right out as a sore thumb if I had left it entirely white. Just popping a little bit more magenta in there to differentiate the petals one from another. I could play with this painting all day, but I wanted to make it quick. And trying to decide here what to do with the centers. And I got a Chinese calligraphy brush that has somewhat a stiff point to pick up some new gamboge, this yellow, this bright yellow school bus color, to put in the centers of these flowers. I like to use this Chinese calligraphy brush. I usually travel with it. It comes to a really good point, but it holds paint, and I think I probably paid $3 or $4 for it, so it's not something that, you know, if I left it behind when I'm plein air painting, it wouldn't break the bank to replace it, that's for sure. But it really is a paintbrush that I prefer to grab and go, or use in my studio. And I have lots of very valuable brushes, but this, for some reason, is one that I pull out. I have lots of these Chinese calligraphy brushes, but when I'm working this small, this smaller one really suits. So I'm kind of assessing and trying to decide how to finish this up. Not really happy about some of these greens that dried pale. It's because I used quite a lot of water when I put the initial greens down, and I wanted a little bit darker greens here and there to pop the flowers forward. The darks pop the bright colors. See how that petal came forward as I put the dark green behind it? And this area still was a little bit too bright for me, so I calmed it down a little bit with another glaze of green. Now I'm reassessing. I decided to splash some color, a little bit of splashes here and there. These little splashes, some of them are hitting some wet paint and diffusing a little bit, and some of them are staying put when I splash them down because they're going into dry paper. So I decided that some of my leaves needed a little bit of definition, and in the close-up I think you'll appreciate the veins of the leaves add a little bit of calligraphy that give it just enough definition. And that's just about it. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll subscribe and join me once again.